Hello everyone, Mr. B here, and yes, I know, all of the chapters for this class are done, but now there's a bonus one. And this is one of the fields of psychology that's relatively new, and it's one of my favorites. And it is known as, positive psychology, which is the psychology of happiness. And so this is kind of, again, as I've mentioned, a bonus lecture. But it's something that I'm going to go through relatively quickly, because I hope that people watch it, and it's looking at happiness. So let's get right into it. And so what do we mean first by positive psychology? And when we talk about positive psychology, what we mean is it is the scientific study of happiness. And there's a wonderful video that I usually play in class. I will be linking it below in this video. But I'm going to go right into kind of what the video said, along with what research says for happiness. And so the very first thing, as I just said, is positive psychology is a psychology. Therefore, it is a scientific study. So it's not just some self-help book or, anecdotal, like, oh, this is what worked for me and made me feel good. Not to say that self-help books aren't good. They're very beneficial. But when we talk about positive psychology and the various findings and the things that we promote for happiness, it just should be stressed that this is stuff that is based upon research that has been done into happiness. And when we talk about positive psychology, a lot of time, especially when you're looking at the clinical aspect of psychology, it's bringing people that are suffering from certain mental disorders or psychological disorders kind of going back to average or, to, the quote-unquote normal. Positive psychology, on the other hand, is going above that average. It's not just saying, this person is suffering from depression, let's get them back to where, they're not being suicidal. It's going beyond that of like, how can we feel the best? How can we get the most enjoyment out of life? That sort of thing. So it's focusing on what's right. Instead of just looking at what's wrong. Because unfortunately, a lot of the focus in psychology and a lot of stuff that we talk about, in addition to just, how we behave and how we think, it's focusing more on when things go wrong and, when there's certain, again, psychological disorders. Positive psychology is kind of that other side of it, of, all the good that can happen, all the best that we can feel. Also in positive psychology, there's this new idea of something known as flow. And it's this whole idea that you just get so entrapped in an activity or a thought or a feeling that you experience kind of this elevated emotion. And the best way of describing this is if, for those that are athletic, if you've ever gone running or been in a sport where you get this kind of runner's high or a sports high where all of a sudden like you just feel like you're in the game. That would be an example of flow. So just this idea that like all of a sudden something clicks. And we're still figuring out why that happens and how that happens, and how we can experience that more and more. There's also this idea of mindfulness. Because a lot of times, and I've said it millions of times, our brains are so smart, but sometimes they're smart to a fault, where we start thinking about things and, just getting stuck in our own heads about thinking about things that could potentially happen or reminiscing on things that have happened in the past. And mindfulness is more just kind of moment-by-moment thought, being here in the present, not being as much worried of all these potential, what if this happens, or, more thinking about, stuff that's happened in the past and, oh God, that one time that I embarrassed myself. Mindfulness is more, what's happening right now? Where am I? Where do I see myself? It's kind of the same, I know I talked about it in a previous chapter, but kind of grounding. And also just thinking about things that we often take for granted. So again, it's very easy to start thinking about things that we used to have, things that the way things used to be, or thinking about things we don't have that we wish we had, that other people had. And mindfulness is more just realizing all the wonderful things that we have right now. There's also this idea of learned optimism, and it really is learned. And one thing, and again the video goes into it as well, but in positive psychology, it's this whole idea that optimism takes effort, and it takes hard work. You're not just going to wake up one day and just, see the bright side in everything. Like everything in life, it takes practice, it takes effort, and throughout time you get better and better at it. And I will be showing a technique for helping with that learned optimism very, very shortly. And when we talk about learned optimism, it's the opposite of learned helplessness, which of course we learned about in a previous chapter. This whole idea that, you try over and over again and you constantly get defeated. And so you just learn that, you can't get out of a situation, or, things are always going to be bad. Learned optimism is the opposite of that, where yes, things sometimes go wrong, but, you can find a way out. There's a silver lining to the cloud, that sort of thinking. It should be also stressed that positive psychology is not a cure-all. No matter what in life, there will always be hardships. There will always be instances where things don't seem very nice. And that's fine. That's a part of life. But positive psychology helps, again, to go above and beyond that just idea of the average. It helps to have, this kind of psychological hardiness, which we've talked about before, that makes, the world just seem a lot brighter. And so when I was talking about learned optimism, one thing that you can do, and it's something that I'm going to be having you do for those that are in my class, you're going to be doing one day for your journals, is there's this idea of a gratitude journal. And to help us be more mindful of what we are grateful for, it's just when you wake up in the morning and when you go to bed. There's different versions of it, but the one that I like is you think about 5 things that you're grateful for. As soon as you wake up, 5 things you're grateful for. As soon as you go to bed, 5 things you're grateful for. And it's not supposed to be like these huge things. It can be tiny stuff. Like, wow, I'm so happy that, I woke up this morning and I can breathe through both my nostrils. Because, man, there's some days, especially in the winter, when, your nose is all stuffed up and, you can't breathe as well. So just minor things like that, realizing like, oh, hey, I was able to get out of bed this morning, both my legs worked today. Teeny things like that, training us to be more mindful of all of the things that we have working towards us, instead of kind of ruminating and thinking about things that go against us. And for those that practice these kind of gratitude journals, research has found that there is about, roughly speaking, a 10% increase in overall happiness. But, as you see, and as I talked about, learn optimism, it takes work, it takes effort, and it takes time. And so a lot of times in the beginning, you don't instantly see an increase in your overall happiness. It takes a while. But like anything in life that takes longer and it takes hard work and effort, it's more permanent. When you see this kind of increase in happiness becomes permanent, and you have, we mentioned, learned optimism. So here's some other research. Another thing all the time when I ask people, what makes you happy? A lot of people say money. If you just gave me money, if I just had money, I would be happy. And there's kind of a controversy about this, because some research says, yes, money makes us happy, and some research says, no, money does not make us happy. And so the research that I'm focusing on is the research that says both yes and no. Money does make us happy, but only to a certain extent. For instant happiness, yes. Someone hands you $100, man, that's going to boost my mood. But not permanently. And when we talk about money and happiness, what you see over and over again in research is that when you're struggling for survival, or you're not feeling comfortable because of financial strains, then yes, money helps. Money makes you feel happier because all of a sudden you're not as worried about just basic survival or just feeling comfortable. But then you'll see that as you make more and more, that kind of fulfillment or that feeling of happiness, it starts to plateau. And then it gets to the point where as you make even more and more, you actually see a decline. And essentially what's happening is a lot of people think that happiness is this thing that you obtain. You know, you're given something that makes you happy, and that's not true. And so when people have all this money, they have this feeling of, oh, I have all this money, I should be happy now. And they realize they aren't. Because happiness, again, when tied to money, seems to be more for financial stability. But there's another point to it as well. Because another bit of research that was done has found that however much money you make, how much you think you need to get by tends to always be a little bit higher. And so, of course, there's always outliers. It's not a perfect correlation. But over and over again, a lot of times people, you get a raise, you make a little bit more money, and then you say, okay, if I just make a little bit more, then I'll be good. Then I can, not have to worry as much about groceries. Like, I just need to make a little bit more. And then you make a little bit more. And then you're like, well, just a little bit more. And this happens over and over and over again. You see that as a person makes more and more money, they tend to feel as though they need just a little bit more, and then they'll be happy. And one of the theories is, again, it's this whole idea that, money can make us happy. And so if we aren't happy, after we've made this raise, after we make such and such amount of money, there's this kind of underlying thought process of, oh, well, it just means that I just need to make a little bit more. Then I'll be comfortable. Then I'll be happy. But you never make it there. One other bit of research is there's this association curve. So again, it's this whole idea that after you make a certain amount, yes, it increases your happiness. But then when you get, and various research out there says a little bit of a different amount. Sometimes it's around 50,000. Other times, as you can see on this one, it's more 75,000. But it seems like that's that kind of sweet spot where if you make or earn about 50,000 to 75,000 a year, that's kind of that sweet spot where you feel good. Anything beyond that is what we call static happiness. I can see that it's cut off a little bit, so I apologize for that. And static implies no growth. And it can even mean negative happiness or even restlessness, where, you're making all this money, but you just don't feel any better. And it's because you've already met that survival, you've already met that comfort level. You're not going to get any more happiness out of how much you make. So keep that in mind. Sometimes there's people that just chase after a job that makes the most. And, it feels really good. You feel financially stable, but sometimes people can get stuck in a rut because they're not doing something they enjoy. They're just doing something that makes them a lot of money. But again, everyone is different. Another thing that research has found in positive psychology is this idea of choice. And you'll see over and over again that there's a lot of things out there that a lot of people think makes them happy, like money, that in the grand scheme of things does not. And choice is another one. I'm going to very, very briefly talk about this study. But there was a study, the JAM study, where a grocery store conducted 2 different tasting sessions. In one tasting session, there were 24 different choices of jams, so lots of different options. And then the other one, there were only 6 choices of jams. So, just like one of every flavor, and that's it. Whereas this one has combinations, all sorts of stuff. And as you would expect, more people were attracted to having more choice because we tend to like having options. We have that feeling like, I want as many options as possible. So it attracted more people. But then, you can see for both of the different sessions, each shopper tended to sample about 2 flavors. But you'll see 3% of the shoppers actually bought a jam. So, they were actually happy they actually got it. When there were 6 choices, however, less people were attracted, because again, they didn't think they would have as much choice. Same amount of sampling, but 30% of the shoppers actually bought the jam. And this goes with the whole idea of choice. That even though we think we want more options, we think we want more choices, research would show that it doesn't make us feel better. And another example of this, since summertime is coming, is let's say that you are outside, still practicing social distancing. I don't know when this video is going to be coming out. And an ice cream truck comes, and there's all these different options for ice cream. And let's say that you want chocolate, like you're feeling chocolate. So you look here and, okay, yeah, ooh, there's the fudge bar, there's nothing but chocolate. Ooh, but you have the Sundae Crunch, which is mostly chocolate, but it also has that crunchy bit. Ooh, but you have this chocolate outside with a little bit of vanilla. And so, because there's more options, let's say you go with the Sundae Crunch, and it's good. It has chocolate, it has that crunch. But there's that nagging feeling in the back of your mind where you're like, well, what if I got the fudge bar? Would I have been happier with that because that had more chocolate and I wanted chocolate? Whereas let's say that there was another ice cream truck that came and it had simply strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate. And that's it. And you want chocolate? So you order chocolate. Because there was no other options close to what you wanted, you actually feel more satisfied with that chocolate ice cream that you got. Because it was chocolate ice cream, you got chocolate ice cream. So there's this whole idea that because there's more options, there's a better likelihood of there's something that's similar to what you also wanted. So there's always this thought in the back of your head of, well, what if I picked that other option? Would that have been a better option? So long story short, it seems like it's good to have enough options so what you're looking for is there. So like, again, if you wanted chocolate ice cream, it wouldn't help if you went to an ice cream truck that didn't have anything that was chocolate. So some choice is good, but it seems like beyond a certain point, it becomes too much, and then we don't feel as satisfied. So for those of you that are in a relationship, or you have a partner and you're trying to decide, where to go to eat, don't give a bunch of options. Like, pick two or three options and go with that. Don't think about every single thing out there. Because then you're going to go to that restaurant, you're going to go to that food place, and you'll be like, oh yeah, this is good. But what if we went here? So choices don't make us happy. Alright, and we're going to do some rapid fire, because again, it's getting too long, and I want people to watch this video. Knowledge. There is a common phrase that ignorance is bliss, and there is some research to back this up. Essentially what it's saying is the more that we learn about the world and the more knowledge that we have, the more grim, unfortunately, sometimes things seem. That being said, though, even though there is some research to show that, not being aware of, the horrible things that are happening in life can make us feel better, being knowledgeable can also help us to do more, which then makes us feel more satisfying. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Being honest. This should come as no surprise, but being honest is good, and it makes us feel better. Even though sometimes it might hurt initially, in the long run, it makes us feel better. And it's not so much being honest with other people, though that is also very important, because when you start not being honest, then you have to keep track of certain lies, and it gets very frustrating and very confusing very quick. But it means more being honest with ourselves, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Understanding that we're not perfect and we make mistakes, and that's okay, and being honest about that. Because if you're not being honest with your own flaws, you can't work on them, and you can't grow. And when you don't see that growth, you can feel stagnant, which isn't fun. Alright, love. This is a fun one, and some research to back it up. And more so when I talk about love, I'm talking about marriage. And this idea of arranged marriages. Because there's this idea out there that, you find your significant other, and then you marry that person, and then, you're happy forever. And this idea that arranged marriages, just don't work because you don't know that person. You're marrying a complete stranger. So there was research out there that looked at married couples, both those that got married to, someone that they knew, someone that they loved, versus people that got an arranged marriage, so they didn't really know the person that they married, and they looked at happiness over time. And as you will see, after around the 2-year mark, those that married for love, married someone that they knew, you suddenly see this dip in happiness. Or a love scale, as it were. Whereas arranged marriages, again, it started off lower, but you actually see it kind of increase over time. And the idea about this, it isn't to say, don't marry someone that you love. The theory behind this is, after a while, especially if it's someone that you've known for a really, really long time and then you marry them, sometimes it can get a little boring. Like, you already know everything about this person. And so then it gets a little frustrating because then you feel like you're not doing anything, you're getting stuck in a rut. And so the thing to take away from this is not that you should just marry a complete stranger, but more so that you should try out new things with your partner. So if you do end up getting married later on in life, or even if you have a boyfriend or girlfriend and things are starting to feel stagnant, try something new together, a new hobby, a new activity, something exciting, and that seems to help. And then kind of the huge thing that I want to say, because I'm a huge believer in cognitive behavioral therapy, and the idea of cognition and how you think about something, is this whole idea of perception, which you talked about way back in the beginning of this class. And so here's a picture of one person on a rainy day that's not having a very good morning. And the thing that I want to kind of talk about with this is that person can have a million different ways of seeing the situation. Like, let's say that this person was about to go to a job interview, they were running a little late, and then this happened. Mud all over their clothes. One way that the person could see it is that their day is ruined. They're going to look like a joke coming in there all, covered in mud and stuff. And they might as well just give up and go home. Another way that they can see it is, I'm running late. This sucks, but it's not the end of the world. I'll explain what happens. If it's people that don't understand that, that's not a place I want to work at anyway. And then they go and, brush it off and say, I'm starting a new fashion. Like, it's all about how you see a situation. And this is a huge thing when it comes to happiness. And I said it earlier on in this video, but happiness is not something that happens to you. It is something that you feel, something that you interpret as happiness. So a lot of people spend a lot of their life going out and trying to find things that make them happy. And it's not so much finding things that make you happy, it's more so learning to find the happiness in the things that you do. That isn't to say to go out and try new things, like that's wonderful, but not to expect that, you go out and you try something new and then that will make you happy. It's more how you choose to see that situation. So, from my belief, perception is a huge thing. And I will say, this is backed up in research, looking at how people are perceiving a certain event, and then how it makes them feel. Going back to the health psychology chapter, we talked about stress and how you perceive stress is what makes the impact on your health. If you see stress as this negative thing and it makes you sick and all of that, it's going to make you sick and all that. It's going to make you more likely to die. Whereas if you see stress as, your body is getting you ready to overcome this obstacle, if you see stress as this wonderful thing, this ally, this thing that is going to help you, you don't see those negative effects of stress. So again, a lot of it is perception. So good or bad, right or wrong, it's all about perception. There's all sorts of things that unfortunately happen to us throughout our life that are commonly seen as negative. But if we find a way to put a positive spin to it, to get something good out of it, it makes life so much more enjoyable and so much happier. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is this idea of generosity. And so much research out there is finding that if you really want a boost to your happiness, be generous. Give to others. And I don't necessarily mean, you have to give away your paycheck and pay a lot of money to a charity. But it can be money. So donating in some way, shape, or form, no matter how much or how little, is a way. But also it can be time. So, helping someone out. Someone says they need help moving and you help them out. It can be energy. So again, you help lift something up for someone, you help them move, spend your energy on something, do a walk for, some sort of charity. It can be a compliment, so just simply saying something nice to someone, even someone that you don't know, say, hey, I really like what you're wearing today. Something small like that. It's amazing how it can improve your mood. Remembrance. noticing something, that's happened to someone, or someone mentioned something, and then like a week later you bring it up, that is such a huge boost, not only to someone else's happiness, but your own, to just remember that about someone. Being a shoulder to cry on. So, someone's having a bad day and you're just there for them. Not only a shoulder to cry on, but an ear to listen with. So just being there for someone is being generous. You are giving your time, your effort, you're giving to others. Again, just being a person to be there is huge. A lot of times people think they need to do these big, extravagant shows of, affection for people that they care about. And so they forget, that it doesn't take much. And then just minor acts of kindness, like holding the door for someone, helping someone pick something up and carry it to their car. Teeny things like that. Just smiling at someone that seems like they're having a bad day. It's amazing how much it can change someone's day. And we're going to try this out. And so this is something that, obviously, if you're only watching this video to watch this video, you won't see the activity for the class, but I recommend that anybody does this at any point. But just send a message to someone that you know, that maybe you haven't talked to in a while, or maybe you did just talk to them, and send them a quick message. It's just like if it's a friend, say, hey, I was just thinking about it, and I wanted to let you know that I really appreciate that you're my friend and that you're in my life. Something as small as that. To just right now, send a message out to someone. Or, if there's someone that you know that needed something, just quickly help them out. If you are at home with your parents, do a quick chore without being asked. Something small like that, and see how it makes you feel. And see how the person responds to it. But that is one of the biggest things out there that can help with happiness. And so if you were to take anything away from this, and I'm sorry this video got a little long, there's two main things. One thing is the generosity. Just every once in a while, do something nice for someone. It usually doesn't take much. Again, there's giant things you can do, but you don't have to do that. Something minor to just help out someone else, to be generous to someone else. Not only does it make them feel good, but it makes you feel good. And then the other thing is perception. When things seem to be going from bad to worse, and they feel like they're out of your control, find something to gain from it if you can. So even if, you had this idea in mind and everything went wrong, to say, okay, this is a learning experience, I messed up, but I can grow from this and become a better person because of it. Just changing that perception ever so slightly can have such an impact, not only on your life, but on your mood and happiness. And so that's just a quick little thing about happiness. Please try this activity out. Again, if you're in my class, it's going to be an activity you quote-unquote have to do. But, again, try it out. It's not going to hurt you. And it can only help and make you feel good. But that's just a minor, teeny little glimpse into this relatively new field of positive psychology.